So I just want to start, since we're going to officially start, I wanted to start with two things that I thought were important. And the first one is, I want to say thank you for spending your time with me, because time is valuable. And this is a fun experience for me as well, so I'm very grateful to you all for coming. The other thing I think is important to know is that I am not a professional speaker. So at some point, if I wander off topic and you're thinking, what is she talking about? We also are sharing that, because I will be thinking the same thing. I'll be like, I don't know what I'm talking about right now. So just to begin on that idea, one of my favorite sort of like trivia things that I think about, I saw it one time on a Nova special or a PBS something, was about how really humans are the only animal capable of choking to death. Now there is a caveat there. Obviously anything that breathes can drown, and anything can swallow something that is too large. I mean, there are visuals of fish eating birds and then they die, but the way that we are built, we have a separate airway and a separate food pipe. And this happened when we became upright walkers and our lung capacity changed. But what it really did for us is it made us storytellers. And we began our specific human journey that is unlike any other animal, because we tell stories to each other. We tell the stories of, don't go over there, there's a tiger in the bushes. Or don't, hey there, I'm Emily, we're just starting.
Sorry, I went to the classroom on that.
Oh, no worries. We're talking about the power of storytelling and how we as a human animal are the only ones who do it in our own specific way. So, and we've gotten to this place. Oh dear, how do I turn that off? Nope. We've gotten to this place in our history where, in many ways, we spend most of our life wrapped in a series of story. You know, where we tell each other stories constantly about where we, oh my gosh, I am everywhere. How do I, it's distracting to me. But I'll just try to do this. Where we tell it, thank you. Where we're just constantly in the middle of storytelling. We're telling each other why we should go somewhere, why we shouldn't go somewhere. We're constantly retelling old patterns of stories to ourselves about something that happened and why it happened, and we're just constantly reliving these narratives. And one of the things that I'm 56 now, that at my age, I miss most about having grandparents was I used to always say, what's down the road? What's coming that I don't know about? And what could you tell me that's going to make this journey more clear? It's going to make it a better journey. So that's what I wanted to do today. Was I want to tell you all as a 56-year-old something that's down the road that's taken me a while to figure out. But before we get there, I have to tell you how I got on this road, which is I am from North Carolina. I went to college to be an interpreter. I loved Spanish, and that's what I wanted to do. And when I was in college, as you all will figure out, I'm an extroverted extrovert. I lived in a sorority house with a bunch of girls, which, if you ever get a chance to live with a group of people your own age in your own sexual identifying group, it is worth it. It is a grand experience. And so I, as a freshman, lived in this house, and I had a roommate named Angela Russ, who was a senior. And she was lucky and had an internship at the CBS affiliate in our college town. And even though our town was tiny, this affiliate was big because we covered a lot of area. We were 65th in the market, which at the time was a big deal. And it came down from Network that you need to hire a woman, because there were no women on the air in this station, and it was starting to look funny. And because these men were of a certain age, and Angela was responsible for showing the audition tapes about these women, she just heard all kinds of jokes and whatnot. And at that time, I would wander around the sorority house, and it's an old bit now, but at the time it was new and fresh, and people thought it was funny. And I would showcase things, and I would tell these funny showcase stories. Y'all may not even know what showcasing is, but it's taking an item and talking about why you needed it. And so she said, will you do me this favor and just make this funny prank tape, and I'll submit it, as an audition. And while they're joking, the joke will really be on them because we'll be having this funny prank. So I go to Q1 on my college campus and I make a showcasing video about the weather, and it is ridiculous. And I submit it and they call me in and I meet with them and I think, oh my gosh, I had just turned 19 years old and I had lied. I had misrepresented myself and I felt awful. So I thought, well, the best thing I could do in this situation is not waste their time. So I watched the weather for 2 weeks straight. I was like, what is happening? What's unusual? What's predictable? What can I talk about? And I went in there, and no matter what they asked me, I would just respond with some sort of weather anomaly or weather fact, and they hired me. And they never asked me how old I was. They just sent me upstairs to HR. So all of a sudden, here I am. I'm a 19-year-old. I have a 6 and 11 on-air news spot in an area that I know nothing about. So I switched to the journalism department. And I continued on from there. And a year or two in, I'm getting headhunted from other networks and other places. And I have to travel with my mom because I'm too young to rent a car. And many times they won't rent me a hotel room. So she and I are going to Kentucky and, Louisiana. And I sit down and I start to think, well, what am I going to do with my life? Like, is this my path? Am I going to just get into news and stay in it and hope that when I'm 35, I'm in Cincinnati living alone in a place where I feel safe enough to drive to and from the station in the middle of the night? And I thought, that's not really what I want to do. And so simultaneously, I watched this movie called My Left Foot, which stars Daniel Day-Lewis. And I don't know if any of you have seen that or if you know who Daniel Day-Lewis is, but he's arguably a truly talented actor, which is rare. And in this movie, he plays a real person who is an artist with cerebral palsy during a time when nobody expected someone with cerebral palsy to have the capacity to do something like that. And it was a moving story, and moving story to me in that I thought, no matter how hard I try, I'm never going to be able to achieve what this person has achieved. And for me, that's a real motivating factor. A goal out in the distance that I cannot achieve really works for me. It doesn't work for everyone. Someone like a nice goal that you can get to immediately. I made my bed and I'm there. I like maybe I'll be an astronaut someday goal. That works for me. And so I watched this movie, and then, as luck would have it, Daniel Day-Lewis is filming Last of the Mohicans in North Carolina. So hey there, come on in. So I convinced our station manager, Roy London, to give me a camera package because my roommate's first cousin Keith is the base camp AD. Right now you're like, oh my God, I should not have come in here. I don't know what this is talking about. So he's the base camp AD of Last of the Mohicans, and he says, I can get you an interview with Daniel Day-Lewis. And I'm like, oh my God, yes. So I get the camera package, I drive to Asheville, and they are shooting nights, which means that you have dinner at midnight. So at midnight, I've got my camera package, I'm ready to go, I know I'm going to interview him, and I am prepared to meet the guy who's in My Left Foot, but what I don't know is that Daniel Day-Lewis is a method actor. So he is no longer this retiring artist. He is now this giant frontiersman who is wearing rawhide, and he comes sweeping in the door, and I was unprepared. This was a transition that I was not prepared for. And so he walks up to me and he says, is your belt buckle of flour? And I say, yes. And I walk away. And I don't come back. And Keith follows me out and he's like, what are you doing? Oh my God, I got you this interview with him. And he is not going to give you an interview again ever. You just blew it. And I say, I know I blew it. I said, forget it. And so I go and I meet with the stunt people and I decide I'm going to do the piece on them, and the weekend goes along and it turns out stunt people are awesome and fun, and if you ever get the chance, hang out with all of them because they're hilarious. And then on the last day, on that Sunday, I'm looking out over the Blue Ridge Parkway. I'm by myself. I have a peanut butter sandwich, no drink, And I hear Madeline Stowe and Daniel Day-Lewis in the distance being methody and in love and successful and cool. And I'm just sitting there like a big fat loser. And then here he comes. He comes walking across the field. And I'm looking around. And I'm the only person, so I know he's coming my way. And I think about it because I've been to this transitional place before. And I think, I know what I'm going to do. He walks up and I say, he's Irish. I say, my family is from Ireland. And he says, really, where? And I say, I'm lying to you. They are not from Ireland. I'm really nervous. And I don't know how to handle this moment with you. And I said, I know I said I needed an interview. I know I said it was for my station. I would like that, but I'm really here because I want to be an actor. And I don't know how to do it. And I was wondering if you could tell me how I do that. And he says, well, it's very simple. He said, you move to a town where they offer acting as a business. You get in class and you learn how to do it, and then you apply for the jobs. And I was like, oh my gosh, thanks, Dan. And so I look and I find this article, and it says, for every 500,000 actors in Los Angeles, there are 3 jobs. And I thought, great, I have statistics. I can come up with a metric. And I create the jankiest metric ever, which in my mind, it was something like for every 112 auditions, I will get a call back. And for every call back I get, I'll get a job. And so I move out here. And as luck would have it, when I meet people and they say, how did you get to Los Angeles from North Carolina? What? Because back then it was kind of a big deal. They're like, how did that work out for you? And I said, well, Daniel Day-Lewis told me to come. And people were starry-eyed. And they said, well, how do you know Daniel Day-Lewis? I said, oh, well, I met him on the set of Last of the Mohicans. It's like, people are freaking out. And they said, what were you doing there? I said, oh, I was working. And people are just like, done. I have an agent immediately. And of course, we were saying the same thing, but not having the same understanding. So I get this agent, and I'm doing my thing, and some time passes, and Last of the Mohicans is coming out here, and they're going to have a premiere. And so my friend Chris, who works at William Morris, says, why don't we go? And I said, I would love that. I would love to see my good friend Daniel Day-Lewis. So we go, we manage to get into the after party, and there he is, and he is, hey there, and he is no longer this like beefy frontiersman. He is now, we're talking about origin stories. He is now preparing for the age of innocence, and he is weepy and uncertain and insecure. And I run up to him and I go, Daniel, oh my God, it is Emily. I am here. I have an agent. And he looks at me and he leaves. So we have a full circle of it. And this hurts my feelings so badly. I just can't believe it. Everything I thought was true was not true. So I wander over to the bar, and there's this very scruffy guy sitting there, and because it's the 90s, I pull out my cigarette and he lights it for me. And then he says, can I get you something? I say, yeah, I'll have a beer. And I stand there for a second, and he's trying to kind of talk a little bit, but I'm just sad because my good friend Daniel and I are not friends. I'm learning. And I just excuse myself and go to walk away. And this woman comes up and she stops me and she says, oh, he's a really nice guy. You should talk to him. And I said, oh, no, it's not for me. And she said, no. He's a very nice looking guy underneath all that. Have you ever seen Thelma and Louise? And I say, oh, yeah, I saw that. And they said, he's the guy on the road. His name's Brad Pitt. And I was like, it's not for me. And I walk off. So why I bring this all up is because we see all these many transitions. But that didn't stop me from landing in Los Angeles and having my first thought when I got onto the curb to get my cab being, I looked up and I thought, this is the biggest mistake of my life. All these little transitions had gotten me to this place where I was fully convinced that I shouldn't be where I was. And yet I'd spent all this time getting there. It turns out that wasn't true. I spent 25 years in the industry, and I got to do some crazy things with some crazy people. I raced cars with George Lucas, and I ran the light board for the Stones, and there was no end for like fun, engaging adventures. I never did see Brad Pitt and Daniel Day-Lewis again, but it doesn't matter. So I spent 10 years on a show called CSI Miami, which at the time I was on it was the largest show in the world, and that was very interesting to be a part of. I also spent a few years on a show called The West Wing, which is something that people still go back and revisit because it's a wonderful example, if you haven't seen it, of the story we tell ourselves about who we hope we are and how we hope things go and how we wish we solved problems. And it still really pays off. And that was a fun one. But as CSI Miami was coming to an end, I had a child, and I thought, I can't work 70 hours a week. And I have a husband who is a traveling musician. That's actually not true. He's not a minstrel. He's a touring musician. And so I decide to stay home. And because I'm used to doing 70 hours a week worth of work, and I'm used to being on my feet, when I start momming, this is how I start doing it. And I'm just momming the shit out of everything. And the day comes where I go to take her to her first day of preschool. And the teacher meets me at the door, and she says, "How does she transition?" And I say, "I don't know what you mean." And she said, "How does she do when you're not with her, when y'all are separated? Does she need a minute? Does she jump right in? Does she get upset? Is she relieved?" And I thought to myself, I have never considered any of these things. I lie. I say, she's going to be great. And I went and got in the car and realized I was also facing a transition. And I cried for about an hour. And then I went and bought a mini cake and I ate it with my hands. So I learned something. I'm getting somewhere in this journey. So when Pippa's about 7, I realized, because this is a lot, obviously, and I thought, Pippa's not going to want me to be the room mom forever. She's not going to want me all up in whatever she's doing, and I'm going to get out in front of it. And one thing I had done in college that I did really enjoy, that I felt like was not some haphazard idea, was I love to volunteer. So I started volunteering at all different kinds of things. And my friend Tracy took me to Kern Valley State Prison, which is a maximum security prison up close to San Francisco in Kern Valley. And we were working on an entrepreneurial program called Defy Ventures, which is helping people to, their motto is transform the hustle, which is helping people to take their business model that might have not been a legal version, turn it into a legal version, so that, one thing I learned on that day, when one is released, and 99% of all people are released, in the state of California, a life sentence with good behavior is only 7 years. So someone with multiple life sentences and good behavior can be out very quickly. So it's important to have a business idea of what you want to do. But because I'm now someone who is thinking quite a bit about transitions, when I start playing this game of get to know you with someone who I have very little in common with, I ask about children. I realize most people have children that I'm talking with. And then I say, do you have an emotional plan for when you leave? And so that's what I really wanted to share with you all today from being down the road, is a very simple idea that I have learned about emotional planning. Because many times we get to the moments of change in our life, and they are big changes. We step off the plane and we live in Los Angeles and we think, how did we get here? How did this happen? And what do I do next? I feel totally unfamiliar. Without stopping to realize that there were these tiny linked actions that led all the way here. And that is how our life is continually unfolding in multiple planes at all times. One in school, in emotion, it can be with family, it can be something social that may be adjacent to reality. we're taking action and action and action and action and action. And at the moment where we end up with no action, that's actually when we walk through the doorway of change. And that doorway is acceptance. So I just wanted to say from my 56-year-old place, when you are in moments of big change, look at all the many transitions that got you there and ask yourself, are there any other actions I can take? What actions are available to me? And like now, I'm not a professional speaker. You don't have to be qualified. I think we spend a lot of time getting in our own way saying, I'm not qualified to take this action. Just take it. Just make an action. Just do something. Because if you're willing to do something, you're finding your way down the road. And you will get to a place where there is no action left. And then you must do the deep work of accepting where you are. And then you will walk through. It's a paraphrase of Robert Frost, but he says the only way out is through. And that is 100% true. So this is just a moment in time from down the road saying this is a trick that I've learned. And I was going to show this slideshow, and it's really just me. We don't have to show it, but it's really just a series of pictures of me where if you had asked me at one time or another, how did I feel? And I would say I felt very differently, but you would see they all look the same. The hair kind of stays the same. It gets a little longer, a little shorter, a little curlier, a little straighter. The makeup gets grander, the clothes get grander, and then they fade away. But the end shot is a picture of my daughter and I who went this September to the White House. And we got to meet the president. And here I sit, having made the not worst mistake of my life to come to Los Angeles, that put me on a show that would eventually take me to the White House. And I'd get to have a conversation with someone who is a person who makes decisions that influence the world. And I could ask questions and get to see them. And what I learned from being there, and depending on how you feel about things, you will be like, well, yes, obviously, or well, yes. What I learned about being at the White House was that anyone can have that job. I met so many people that worked there, and it was a bipartisan group of people. And they had all just taken steps of action to get them to this place. And acceptances of where they should be within that place and where they shouldn't be. But it was very inspiring to be there. And I thought about that because no matter how you feel about it, I don't know anyone who is agnostic about where we're heading with having new leadership. Some people are very excited about it, and some people are really not excited about it. But regardless, we are going. We are having this transition. And within that transition, there are many things that will stay the same about how the government works and the rule of law, and there will be some more monumental changes that will require action or acceptance. But this is a recipe that it's taken me 56 years to finally learn, and I hope it will be helpful for y'all to know. Action is the road, acceptance is the doorway to the next journey. And that's kind of all I was going to say today. So I don't know if anyone has anything that they want to just discuss within the whole group, or if there's any thoughts any of you might be curious about. What's it like to work in prison? What's it like to work on a television set? What's it like to be a stay-at-home mom? If there are any glimpses down the road that y'all are interested in, I think we've got some time to talk about it, or not, because it's your time.
This is so great, Emily. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Let's give her a big hand. That was amazing.
I loved being here with you guys today.
We are so happy to have you. But you all ask her questions, take this time. Does anybody actually want to see the slideshow? I would love to see it, I feel like.
Well, the whole thing about the slideshow, we can see the slideshow. Let me see. I might be able to work it. The whole thing about the slideshow is just that it is that I'm not a baby, but I'm actually still exactly that same person. I remember the moment I put on that green turtleneck and asked my mom if I could wear her add a bead necklace. And by the way, she still has it, and my eyes are on it all the time. So you see change and you see evolution, but it's the same person. That same baby is just here having this conversation. And then it moved to this, which is, again, their props and their costumes, but it's really the same. It was just a very exciting and vibrant part of this journey. And then I chose different ages of Pippa because I noticed in all these pictures, in many ways, we're doing the same thing. We're just hugging each other. You know, I was lucky enough to find a human being that I really connect with, but it wasn't without work and it wasn't without a lot of care during transitions. And then this, in many ways, is just the same idea with a very different group of people than I was used to. Almost all the people in our class identify as male. We've got one who's a female. But we're sharing our stories and we're talking about how to move forward. And that's what the ground is about, is that within action are buried some things that if you lose your way in action, you can call upon. One is goals. It's easy to set a goal. Even if it's just to make your bed, it's a goal, it's achievable. There are larger goals. And when goals are unavailable to you, there are consistencies. And consistencies, for me personally, come in the way of nature. I like the consistency of the breeze. I like the consistency of trees. And so that's why we call the program the ground. And then there we go. That was an amazing moment because it's a person who's had an incredible life journey, who I was really excited to be in the presence of. And oddly, I had breakfast with him before he was ever president. And we got to talk about that. But more so than that is when you look at this visual, it seems so foreign. I mean, that portrait of George Washington, and who has a flag in their living room, and this fancy sconces and that fireplace. But when I was there, they say the White House is the house of the people. It is. I sat on all the furniture. We all did. I saw where they make the food. I didn't feel like I was not a part of it. It was a very pivotal experience. And Pippa felt the same way. As a 13-year-old, they had the presidential podium out for a speech later. And she said, I'm going to go stand behind it and see how it feels. This is available. That's available to every person in this room. And that is me making an attempt to be a professional and using Canva, and a 13-year-old who helped me do that. But action and acceptance are really your keys. And when you can't find your action, find your goals. And when you can't find your goals, find your constants. But this hopefully will just be a nice template, because you all are coming up on this journey that I remember like it was yesterday, which is you have your plans and your thoughts. You think you might be a Spanish interpreter and you might end up playing a cop on television. You don't know, but there are constants within that. Constants can be your work ethic, or what you find interesting, or what excites you, or it can just be the natural world around you. You have your goals. I want to finish this program by 2027. I want to finish this program tomorrow. Those are concrete posts to attach your action to. And I promise you, if you haven't gotten there yet, There's going to be a moment where you get somewhere and you're going to think, how did I get here? And you will be stalled. And ask yourself, is there any action available? Is there any road left in front of me? And if there is not, then go deep and find acceptance, because it is your doorway. That's it. I didn't write a way to end this.
What a dream figure though. You all ask Emily questions. It's really, this is like such life wisdom and such personal philosophy, and it's so good to hear.
I don't know,
So good
is
to
this
hear from you.
typically what happens in these speeches? Do you hear more of like the philosophical take, or is it more nuts and bolts?
What do you all think? My students who have been in some of the others, they tend to be quite a variety.
Yeah, I think it just depends on who's speaking.
Yeah.
It's a good contrast. I have a question.
Okay.
So I'm sure that working in Hollywood, especially early on, like you deal with a lot of imposter syndrome. Like, how did you take that on?
So, imposter syndrome follows every single person all the time. And I actually think it's not imposter syndrome. It's just you're a little out ahead of that action road than you expected to be. So where you actually physically are is out in front of where your mind has accepted you are. There is no such thing as an imposter. We are all artistically evolved animals. And we didn't get here because there was a class on how to be human. We just kept evolving. So do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. And you do not have to be qualified. I know that seems crazy. And for the people who are going to do brain surgery, just ignore that I said that, because you need to be qualified. But
Yeah. So.
are you having something where you're thinking you want to do it, but it's
Not particularly. I just think that, like, I don't know. I just thought that that's like a useful thing that I know about, like Hollywood, and I just know that I don't know. Like, there's been times in my life where I have, like, not in this current moment, but it's just like I feel like a good thing to like talk about and know.
I think a lot of times people have imposter syndrome when they have like a really macro idea about where they want to be. And I would encourage you to take an action when you have that, like go walk outside and just let it fade. Because imposter syndrome, while it feels real and it affects you in a real way, is a mirage. It's a story. It's a story that you've told yourself. And it's not based in reality.
Thank you.
From a 56-year-old. Anybody else have something that they're thinking about at this moment?
When you say like constants, is that like habits that lead where we ultimately want to go?
I think of constants as kind of self-soothers, as things that are consistently there. Like, I remember when the hardest job I've had, and you'll hear other people say this, the hardest job I've had was being a parent. And it's really hard because you are so deeply invested in its outcome. And you have a weird love or desire for this other human to do well, and yet you spend a really large part of the beginning of it unable to communicate with them because you don't speak the same language, and you will never, until now, I finally do, you don't get feedback. So you don't know if you're really doing a good job. A constant that I gave myself during that time was if I felt overwhelmed or I didn't know what to do, I would go wash my hands. And something about just having water, because me personally, my belief system, I feel like water, the natural elements of this earth in many ways are so much smarter than I am because they're not telling themselves any stories. They're not creating narratives. false narratives. It's just factual. That water is water, and it's in my hands, and I can feel it. And I can use it to recenter myself to something that is larger than myself. So for some people, a constant might be God. It might be a higher power. For me, nature is that for me. Constants can also be people. If you have a mentor in your life, and those can be family members, they can be friends, they can be someone you don't know, but they're constant mentors. They're someone that you can look at and say, when I look at this person, I feel a guidepost, or I feel a sense of being able to learn something or connect to something or have a sense of direction. Those are constants. They're always available, things that are always available. And when I first moved out here, a constant for me was the wind, because I thought if I could just look up and see the wind moving something, I know that I'm essentially in the same place that I always was. I'm just in a different state, which I've told myself all kinds of stories about how it's different, but it's really just a distance. Does anybody else have anything that they feel like they're facing at this moment? In many ways, where y'all are, you have so much action available to you that you might not be here yet, because you were in a real action-based moment. And that stillness, yes?
It's related to what you're saying. When you were making those big decisions, such as switching to journalism, for example, did you feel that was the right decision, or were you really not?
I was really just trying to travel the path of least resistance, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to work a job and be in the language department. I think for Elizabeth and I, it was an easier time that way. I think for y'all's generation, we've learned so much about how to game the system that it's impossible to remove strategy from a lot of your thought. But if you can, try not to second guess it, because you're going to get to the end of an action road. And you're going to have to accept that you're in the right place, or accept that you're in the wrong place. And that will send you on. Both of those things will send you on a different action road. I don't know if that helps or not. But I never thought about if journalism was right. I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm around cameras all day long. I can take that test and not even have to think about it, because I know exactly what it is. Because I essentially was removed of a lot of time being able to study. They did eventually figure out how old I was when I went to them and I said I need a day off. I'd been there 2 years and I said I have to take a day off. And they said, for what? And I said, oh, I'm rush chairman of my sorority. And they go, oh my God, why are you doing that? And I said, well, I live in the house, so I have to do something. And they're like, why do you live in a sorority house? And then you could just see their faces. And they were like, how old are you? And I was like, oh, I'm 21. And they were like, have you ever been out after work in your clothes to a bar? And I was like, yes. And then they made me sign a contract saying I wouldn't do that. But by that time I was old enough to drink anyway. So it was okay. Yeah, different times. Anything else that you all can think of before I steal Elizabeth and go have a matcha? I was watching you drink that and I was like, oh,
Those are good on campus.
gosh, it's so tasty. Is anyone still in a moment where they're not exactly sure where they're going? Like, are you just in computer science because, and you don't know where you want to go?
No, yeah, I have no idea where I'm going. Like, honestly, like, especially computer science, like, I feel like recently I've been trying to go on a path where, like, I'm, like, almost, like, doing things to, like, build my resume so then I can, like, establish, like, I don't know, the experience I have or this, like, I don't know, the skills I have. But then later on, I kind of want to go down, like, more unconventional roads, like startup world or entrepreneurship. But those aren't things that, like, I feel like I can do out of college, at least very well. So, yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing.
That is totally okay. You don't need to. I promise you. This is me making you a promise, not knowing you at all. I promise you that when you are 56 years old, you are going to have worked a lot. And you're going to have done some things that you've loved, and you're going to have done some things that you're like, oh, that was a big fat waste of time and I hated it. It's going to be fine.
That's good.
And that's what, when you ask every older person, what would you say to your younger self? It's always the same sentence. Nobody ever says like, oh, I wish I'd flossed. They all say, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Explore what interests you. And if entrepreneurship interests you, try practicing it. And by practicing it, I just mean like, see if you like entrepreneurship, take an action, get on an action road and say, do I like to make physical things? Do I want to make rave bracelets? Does the physical making of something make me happy? Or does the idea of a concept coming to life make me happy? And then pick the physical or the philosophical. And then go down there just a little bit further and see like, how does one shape an idea? And the thing about entrepreneurship, because that's actually what I consider myself to be, I was not in the theater in high school. I was deep into a career in entertainment and had never seen The Godfather until someone told me that was really embarrassing. I saw a business that met my specific set of needs, which were I like to work really hard for extended period of times in groups of people, and then I like a long break. I want to get paid and be able to travel. I want to move to a big city but be able to see my family. Like, it checked many boxes. The same was true with the prison programming. Is I probably shouldn't say this, but I was very unhappy when Trump was president the last time, and I thought, I am not going to be allowed to work in some of the spaces where I feel like we have systems failure, like the public education system or child protective services. But I realized sitting in prison that I could actually start a philosophical idea and no one was going to get in the way. Like, I literally walked from that gym and walked into the warden's office and said, I think you need an emotional translation program, an emotional road mapping, emotional planning. I'm willing to do it. And they said, okay, great, come on in. And so I got on a road with a bunch of other people. And as is always the case, you end up learning from the people that you're involved with. You know, they always say that you are the company you keep, that you reflect. I don't actually like this statement that you are an example of the 5 people that you are closest around, because those 5 people shift, you know. But I learned so much about how punitive we are as a society, about exactly why it doesn't work. And I realized that we've gotten here because we've forgotten to invest in community, because we've become so strategic about getting somewhere down the road. And that's something I say to people all the time, because I'm around a lot of parents who are like, I have my daughter in dance, I have her in singing, I've got her in acting, and she's gonna be this. And I say to them, I say, that's great. It's what you both want. It's what she wants, he wants, they want. I say, but you should look at that and look at me and know that this is the example of what it looks like when everything goes well. This is what it looks like when you are on the most popular television show in the world and they pay you to be there and you get to meet all the people. It doesn't look any different than the girl who borrowed her mom's add bead necklace. It's the same thing. I'm the same exact person. I just had some really big experiences. But really big experiences are waiting for all of you, and they just look different. I think social media has stepped in and told us something about what those big experiences are supposed to look like. But they're stories. It's not real. It's just a narrative. There's no science behind that. I am no more or less happy than I would have been if I had been a Spanish translator. I probably wouldn't have met the Stones, but I might have. You know, that's the only difference. The company I ended up walking with. And some would argue now the company that I walk with is a very undesirable company, but it has been more insightful than any group of people I've ever spent time with. Because you have met people who have been very, very, very low and are having to rebound and recover and in many cases make amends. And I've learned something about when I speak to my daughter, I've learned something about real safety. We've wandered around with all these stories about when you're safe and when you're unsafe, and it's very different than what I thought it was. I feel very safe in situations where I would have never felt safe before. And I feel unsafe in situations where I used to feel very safe. And a lot of that has to do with how predictable the people are around you. I feel like I can wander through the worst neighborhood and feel completely at ease because I can spot when gang activity is going to bleed over and include me in what's happening. And that is so much of where we have crime, particularly in Los Angeles from. And so much of gang activity is not as related to what we think it is, but it's related to wage disparity. People who do not have two parents in the household because they work so far away from home. And poverty. This was incredible to me to learn, which is why I decided to go down this path. The three factors that send people to prison are you grow up around violence, you grow up poor, you grow up not being able to read by the third grade. All three of those things, if someone was experiencing it as human beings living in community together, we should be stepping forward to say, oh my gosh, you can't read? Let's figure out why. Do you have access to proper testing? And if it really just is that you are slower in processing, how can I step in and share time with you to help you process? You're growing up around violence? How can we provide another space for you to live without violence? This is on us. And that's 85% of the population that's in prison. 85%. So that is a community systems failure. And we can all do something about it. And I would have never known that. I would have never known that. I would have thought, oh my gosh, a person killed someone, they should go to jail. And that's what I would have said. And I will let you all know, jail is a temporary housing facility before you are sentenced. If someone shoots someone and they are convicted, you go to prison. You hear people misuse those words all the time. Jail, jail, jail. That is not jail. That is prison. They are different ideas. We could all easily go to jail right now. Elizabeth and I will probably get picked up and go to jail if we for bad driving. But I'm just teasing. But going to jail is very, very easy. Going to prison is something else. And going to prison for well into the majority is a result of circumstances that are disparities, not Class C personality disorders, which is good to know.
So much wisdom and insight. Thank you so much, Emily.
Oh my gosh, I've taken the whole hour.
Can we get a picture with you? Can
Sure.
we get a picture of our group?
Yes.
Yeah, where would you, should we step out into the